Guys, I want to get loud all of a sudden.
Do it.
Sorry, I'm going to...
It's you. I knew it was coming.
I'm sorry, guys, but I need to do that.
It is. You feel like Poseidon chucking that bugger down in the water.
Chucking that bugger.
Did you butt out that deer?
I did not butt out that deer, but the next one I get, okay, it's getting its butt out.
Is that little Stevie out here in the back?
Drobop. Bow drop, I'm sorry. Drobop. Hello. Stay tuned. I'll be back after my seizure.
Every little chipmunk that was running around, everything's dead quiet, and I went, like, that just happened.
I saw what is in essence a nature-gasm.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rutten River Pursuits podcast. Tonight we are gathered around the Sonic Campfire with my good friend
Catfish.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Will.
And we also have a special guest tonight. We have Kip Adams from the QDMA. How's it going, Kip?
Things are good. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. So Kip, why don't you kind of give us a quick background
I feel like the two people out there that don't know who Kip Adams is.
Yeah, for the two deer hunters out there that don't know who Kip Adams is, why don't you give us just a quick background of kind of how you got to where you are with QDMA and what kind of brought you to where you're currently at?
All right, sounds good. Well, I'm a Pennsylvania native. I grew up in north central Pennsylvania. Grew up in the mountains, and and always wanted to be a wildlife biologist. And back when I was going to school, really the only jobs were working for state or federal agencies. So I just kind of figured that's what I would do. I got out of graduate school and got a job for the state of Florida. Worked for their Game and Fish Commission for several years. Then moved back to New Hampshire. That's where I did my graduate work. And took over New Hampshire Fish and Game's deer and bear projects and ran those programs for the state. And it was at that time that I found out about QDMA. This was in the late 90s. Actually, QDMA sent an educational flyer to every single state's deer biologist showing some of the information that they had on educational materials. So I did a little reading about QDMA, joined immediately, and was a member for a year or so, and then ended up QDMA offered the first position in the northeastern U.S. It was a regional director position out of Pennsylvania. I was looking to get a little closer back to home anyway. I loved the organization, applied for the job, got it, and that was 15 years ago. So it's been a great ride. I've had a great time with QDMA, and look forward to another 15 with them.
So did you get out of Florida, right after the pythons came in?
Actually, there was a lot of talk about pythons being in the Everglades when I was there, but I didn't see any. I worked just north of that, and I stayed clear of all of that high water stuff down there.
Yeah, I bet. We were just down in Florida. We had a great time. That was something that we tried to get in on, but, there's all kinds of hoops you got to go through.
Our quick trip to the Everglades, though, the guy's like, they're up there on the, what are those things called?
Those levees.
They're up on the levees up there. Yeah. Go get as many of them as you can.
I'll tell you, it was amazing. I had never been to Florida, had no idea what to expect. I just figured it was all alligators and water moccasins. But when I got there, I realized there was a lot of things that you could hunt there. I had a ton of fun hunting Osceola turkeys and quail and hogs and some other things. So it was quite a treat. Most Northerners don't understand how much game they do have there. But pythons were not one of the things that I did chase around while I was there.
Can't blame you for that.
I tried to steer clear of all the snakes when I was there.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Now, Kip, for when you were spending your time up in New Hampshire, would you say that New Hampshire has a similar kind of geography that we have here to Pennsylvania?
There's New Hampshire is certainly extremely mountainous in the northern part of the state. There are some similarities to Pennsylvania for sure. The one big difference is New Hampshire is a granite state, so everything in New Hampshire was granite or sand, very low productivity soils. Because they had a pretty low productivity deer herd, and actually New Hampshire was different in that at that point it was the only state, or one of the only states in the country, that was trying to grow deer. All the other states were trying to reduce deer herds, but New Hampshire was very different from that. So There are some similarities, I guess, from the mountains and then, but very little agriculture in New Hampshire, and certainly not the oak woods that we have here in Pennsylvania, and nowhere near the productive wildlife habitat that we're lucky to have here.
Yeah, I lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for a while, Kip, and I can honestly say in the little over a year that I was up there, I think I saw 2 deer the entire time I was there. It just now that's like towards the coast, like Exeter, New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But around that Route 1A, that beautiful drive up along the coast there into Maine, like up towards like Kittery trading post type area, I don't believe I saw many deer. And I took
You're right, and
I did a lot of walks in the woods.
I have fond memories from the KTP. I bought a couple guns there and a whole lot of equipment for sure.
Oh yeah, Kittery trading post.
One thing that was really surprising, because actually when I went to grad school there, I was there 3 years for grad school. Left, went to Florida, and then went back and to work for them. But I vividly remember in the first year I was there in graduate school, coming from Pennsylvania, I was used to seeing lots of deer, and I kill a deer every year and consider myself a pretty good deer hunter. The first year I was there, I hunted the entire bow season, and that was literally 2 or 3 nights a week, and every Saturday and every Sunday. So I hunted a lot, and at the end of that bow season, I had seen a grand total of exactly 0 deer. I never saw the first deer. So what it did, though, is it really opened my eyes to learn and to be a good hunter, and realize that, in Pennsylvania, where we had a lot of deer, you could do a lot of things wrong and still see deer. As soon as you get into some of those areas where there weren't as many deer, though, you had to do a lot more things right. So it was pretty humbling that first deer season, but boy, it really taught me how to be a much better hunter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, and then as far as QDMA, I know you pretty much head up the conservation side of things. You want to touch a little bit on kind of what QDMA entails on your end from the conservation standpoint, because it's, the herd management, the nutrition,
Sure. I oversee the conservation department, and that really is our REACH program. REACH is an acronym that stands for Research, Educate, Advocate, Certify, and Hunt. And that really is QDMA's core mission goals. Everything that we do fits within that. So I oversee those elements, and from a research end, we help fund research projects on deer and habitat management. We help design research and assist on some of those. From the education side, that's developing new educational programs, new materials, a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, a lot of teaching. From the advocacy side, we get involved in about 100 issues, either policy issues or management issues a year. It's incredible the number of just really bad bills that are proposed each year that would really hurt deer hunters. And most deer hunters have no idea, of those. But we spend a bunch of time fighting those bad bills on behalf of deer hunters, and supporting good ones to help continue to improve deer hunting programs and our future in states across the whitetails range. The certify part, that's our certification programs. We have our Deer Steward, which is our personal certification program. Those are classes that folks can take. And our land certification program, which we're big on habitat and enhancing habitat and teaching people how to do that. So that falls within that. And the hunt part, that's actually our hunting heritage or our youth program. And I don't directly oversee the youth program part of it. We have a person who works out of our national office that does that. But the first 4 components of that, so anything research, education, advocacy, or certification related through QDMA, I oversee that. And I'm very fortunate. I have a great staff of folks that work under me, and extremely hard workers spread throughout the country that work on individual pieces of that. But I firmly believe that I have the best job at QDMA, and I'm extremely lucky to get to have my hands in each of those things.
Absolutely.
Where do I send my money, Kip?
Well, if I could, I'd actually like to follow up a little bit on the certification side there. Those programs you offer, are they online based, or is that classes that you have to travel to go participate in, or how's that work?
There's both. The Deer Steward class, and we have there's Deer Steward 1 and Deer Steward 2. Deer Steward 1 is the principles of QDM, so it's an actual class. It's a 2-day class that there's about 20 different PowerPoint presentations that cover the 4 cornerstones of QDM. The most thorough deer class that's available anywhere. There's not even a college course on deer that's more thorough than that. That is available in person, and it's also available online. And and it's extremely popular online, just because it's an easy way to take it, and it's much less expensive than an in-person class. The Deer Steward 2, that is in person, because while level 1 is the principles of QDM, level 2 is the application of those principles. So much of level 2 is actually in the field. It's hands-on, with no-till drills, calibrating them, looking at seeders, calibrating sprayers, planting, aging deer by jawbones, aging fetuses, chainsaws in the woods with trees. So it's level 1 is fun. Level 2 is out of this world fun. So we teach typically 2 level 2 classes a year, and we move them around the country. They're all over the place. Actually, next year, this coming summer, we're going to be doing 2. One of them is in Texas, but one of them is in Pennsylvania, which is pretty cool.
Now, do you have to do level 1 before you can do level 2?
You do have to take level 1 first, just so that you're prepared for level 2. So historically, we just taught level 1 in person. So people would come and take that, and then a year or 2 or 3 later, they would take level 2. Well, several years ago, we filmed a level 1. Actually, we were teaching it at Clemson University in South Carolina, and an actual class. Clemson University filmed it, and then we made it available as an online class, and it is extremely popular. Clemson actually teaches it as a college course there, but that was extremely popular, and we said, every year we tweak the class a little bit just to make sure it's as up-to-date as possible. So last year, or actually this past May, we did a level 1 class in Missouri, and we did it in conjunction with Heartland Bow Hunters, and they filmed it for us. So beginning in January of 2018, our online class is going to be completely updated and renewed, and it'll include a bunch of video clips from those guys. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of the production stuff that Heartland Bow Hunters do, but their filming and production is absolutely top notch. So I'm pretty excited to see the new online version, and it includes all of the most up-to-date information there is, and then also the most up-to-date production work as well. So that'll be pretty cool.
If people are interested in taking the first stage of that, Kip, where would they go to find that at? Would that be on your website? It
is. Yep. It's right in the Shed, which is our online store, right at our website at qdma.com. They can go right there and get the online Deer Steward.
Now, is there, let's just say hypothetically, I'm not saying that I am interested, but I'm interested. There's not like a list of like people who have failed the class out there, is there? In case I don't do so well.
Oh yeah, we publish that list and then highlight it. Actually, nobody has ever failed it, and the reason for that is we made it very clear. The very first class we ever taught back in 2006 or 2007 when we started that there is a test, because we want you to do well on it and take it seriously. But we fully recognize that when we teach it, particularly in person, it's not like you have time to go home and study. So we allow the people, if they're in an in-person class, to either take it by themselves if they want, or in a group. They can take it with up to 2 other people. You can talk through the answers and work together. So nobody fails. When we go to those classes, everybody has a certificate, their completion. If there are certain parts of it that you don't do as well on as others, then we hope that you will look at those and continue to learn more about that. For instance, some people will come to the class, and have 0 experience managing habitat at all. So it's extremely intensive. So they get hit in the face with a fire hose with information. So some people don't do as well in that part, but then at least they have the materials that we've given them. They have access to all of those to go back, and they can study harder on what they need in the future. The online one is a little different in that as you go through, you'll take like a section, and then it tests you on that. So, and if for some reason, you don't make it, it will bring another test up again. So you, the longer, I guess the shorter answer is, you're going to pass. Nobody fails. We make sure that we work with you to make sure we teach you as you go through that you're getting the materials, that you came to get. So no worries at all on not passing, and we obviously never, ever share any of the scores that somebody, regardless if they do real well or not. So no worries there.
That's good.
Well, we appreciate you putting his mind at ease with that.
Yeah, I'll put that on my resume then. Is that okay too?
Heck yeah. And there's a lot of professionals that use the certification, or once they've gone through that, on their resumes. Every single class we teach, we have hunters in there, landowners, and natural resource professionals. Lots and lots of state and federal agency folks have taken that class, and typically each year we also have one or two custom deer steward classes that we do specifically for state wildlife agencies. Well, they will contract us to come in and teach that exact class to their staff, and we've done that with a bunch of states. In 2017, we did that with the Georgia DNR hired us, the Ohio DNR hired us to come in. So it's a great training for them as well, particularly given that, that there are just fewer and fewer people coming through college today, that have a real strong deer background, or in some cases even a hunting background. So they really benefit from the training as well. And and I'll tell you this, we taught this for years before actually a state wildlife agency biologist had the highest score in the test. And the reason being, most wildlife curriculums in colleges, focus heavily on population management or managing a certain species, but they don't focus at all or very little on managing habitat and managing hunters. So what we see is a state agency guy will come in, or a girl will come in and do extremely well on the test, like on the deer herd management stuff, but not do as well on the habitat. And you would have some just hardcore deer hunter, QDM guy, managed a little bit of habitat, that kind of was exposed to that and was just so passionate about it that he or she would have the highest score in the test. And it was several years before we had an agency person actually have the highest score. So,
wow.
So I think that's pretty cool. I think it's very cool, that there are hunters out there, and I'm sure you guys run across them as well, that are just so into, learning what they can about deer and habitat and monitoring deer through camera surveys and such, and they're just really into it. And they're smart people, very passionate, and it shows.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking about this and how it kind of can really, really benefit, and maybe you can, we can explore this, but like how it can kind of benefit the Pennsylvania hunter in particular. You have the city kind of urban deer, you have the mountain deer, you have
the agriculture deer. Yeah. You have these different ecosystems, and they're all different. And then you go from somebody has 850 acres and then somebody has 35 yards in their backyard, where there's just a tree line. I'd kind of like to dive into that a little bit. Like how does this kind of translate for the PA hunting?
Well, one of the things that we teach as a class is we spend a fair amount of time early in the class just talking about deer biology and what the latest research shows. So we go heavily into exactly how deer see, how deer hear, what the GPS studies show on how deer move, when they move, why they move, where they move. So kind of cover the groundwork with all of that, and then get into more of the management-related stuff. So even though you're correct, there are big differences in landscapes and, property size and all that in Pennsylvania and any other state. If the students understand, the principles behind deer biology first, then it's a little easier to be able to show them how to apply them best to their specific situation. And I always say one of the coolest things about deer is that there's no one-size-fits-all recipe for how to manage them. And that's a good thing, because if everywhere deer work, you manage them the same way, it'd be incredibly boring, and nobody would want to be a deer biologist. But the fact that there are many different ways to manage deer, all can work extremely well, as a manager, it's about picking a situation that works best for you, such as a management regime that works best, in your area with regard to, winter severity or amount of food that's there, whether you're in New Hampshire where there's granite or sand, or, you're in a lot of Pennsylvania where we have really good soils and a lot of oaks, what the hunting culture is like in your area. You can take all those variables into account and then apply a deer management program that will work best for your situation and one that you are really supportive of. That's what really makes it work, and that's one of the things that's so fun about managing deer, and one of the reasons that so many hunters, are so passionate about it and get wrapped up in it, because, man, it can be a ton of fun. And so we cover all that extensively in the class and show people how to be able to apply that directly where they live, whether they have property or whether they don't. So a lot of people that come to the class that don't have any land, they hunt public land, but they still want to understand how to enhance that habitat or, learn all they can about deer.
And that was going to be sort of a question I was going to ask Kip from a devil's advocate type point of view. Like, if I don't have property, 95% of the hunting I do is on public land, and the majority of that, especially in rifle season, is upstate in what they call the big woods in and around State College. And I don't have an opportunity to do much land management because it's state forest or other public land. But there are principles and concepts that I can learn from these classes that I can apply to help manage the herd where I'm not necessarily cultivating the land.
Yes, absolutely. No, there definitely are. And we take great care to make sure that we cover that end of it, because one of the misconceptions about QDMA is that, all QDMA members are these big property owners. But the reality of it is that's not true at all. 35% of QDMA members do not own any land. Zero. So other than maybe, a quarter of an acre that their house sits on. Our CEO, Brian Murphy, who's a wildlife biologist and, just a hardcore deer hunter, he doesn't own any land other than what his house sits on. So, we know organizationally if over a third of our members don't own any land, it's not very smart for us to just talk about or cater to hunters who do own land, because we'd be alienating, a big portion of our members. So we certainly spend a lot of time teaching people how to enhance habitat, because, we have members that do, but we understand a bunch of our members don't own any land, so we make sure that we take care of things for them as well, teach them about deer and how they can enhance their hunting on state lands, as well as making sure that we work with state agencies to enhance the quality of those habitats on state lands. Because let's face it, there's a lot. We're lucky in Pennsylvania for sure to have over 4 million acres of public land that we can hunt, but it doesn't do us any good to have a lot of access to land like that if it's poorly managed. So we work closely with the Game Commission. Some of our QDMA branches work with their local PGC folks and actually conduct habitat projects on state game lands, which I think is really cool and is a great thing for those local communities, because then all hunters in those areas benefit.
Yeah, that brings up something interesting, Kip. I know I don't think everybody realizes, but QDMA is similar to that of other organizations like NWTF, where you guys use your money to help better areas on public property for the general good of the hunting public, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
That's one of those benefits that all of us can benefit from by joining organizations that practice the conservation of these animals, like NWTF, like QDMA, that it benefits us as individuals, but just us as a hunting community in general.
That's right. And because we fully recognize, the goal is to have good deer hunting. And for those that have access to land or own land, man, that is perfect. We have information to help you. And for those that don't have their own land, we fully understand that, because, there's a lot of QDMA folks that don't either. So we want to make sure that we have information for them as well, but also do what we can on some of those public lands to help make it better. So even if you don't own land, that you still have a good place to go hunt.
Hey, Kip, can we start to talk a little bit about what you personally like? I mean, tell me your what do you like to hunt and your preferences? And I can guess it's a lot of deer.
Yeah, now we need that 50,000-foot view of Kip.
Of Kip Adams.
QDMA, just Kip.
I certainly like deer hunting. I grew up with a turkey call in my mouth and started small game hunting, and just couldn't wait to get to deer hunt in the fall. But my dad was very, very strict about making sure that I learned how to hunt small game first. I got to hunt deer as soon as I was old enough, but deer hunting was not the first thing I did. It was a lot of small game hunting because in his mind it taught me woodsmanship skills. It taught me how to be a hunter. Sure, I could sit at a target and hit the bullseye pretty regularly, or hit clay pigeons in the backyard. But hey, let's take that to the woods. Translate being a good target shooter, to being a good hunter. So I am a firm advocate of taking kids small game hunting, and really that's where they need to start learning. And actually, QDMA as an organization, we firmly believe that deer hunting is not the best first thing for people to hunt. It should be small game. So today, I still love to call turkeys. I love to hunt deer. I like to hunt deer more than anything else. But I have two young kids, and I have an 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And up until, 4 or 5 years ago, I had really gotten out of small game hunting, and just concentrated almost totally on deer hunting. But when my daughter was coming along, I thought, you know what? I need to start teaching her about small game hunting and the way that I learned. So I really got back into it. I had absolutely forgotten how much fun squirrel hunting is. So, and remember, that's what we do as a kid because it is that much fun. So I certainly get a fair amount of small game hunting in now, squirrels mostly. I spend the vast majority of my time chasing deer for sure. And if it wasn't for out-of-state hunts, I would have very few sits by myself, which is I'm very lucky that both of my kids like to hunt. So this year, actually in Pennsylvania, I was never alone during deer season. Either have my daughter or my son with me, and I think that's pretty cool. At some point, they'll be old enough, and they probably will want to do their own thing and won't want to hunt with me every time, but. I certainly treasure those times with them now, and I'm glad that they like to hunt, that they want to go. So certainly teach them all I can about it. And so I like to hunt turkeys and squirrels and that stuff too. But I'm a big turkey hunter and a big squirrel hunter. I am a fanatical deer hunter.
Nice. Hey, if you could use some of your influence on, maybe we could get a small game Sunday. Wouldn't
that be great? That would be phenomenal.
It would diversify our hunting a little bit. I'd love to get out and squirrel hunt, but you get so focused on big game.
I'm actually in the same situation that Kip just described with my kids. Like, I just fell in love with turkey hunting again, with squirrel hunting again here in probably the last 2 or 3 years. My oldest daughter's 15, my son's 13, and my youngest daughter is 9.
Yeah.
And they want to go all the time. My oldest is. She's borderline now. She's got a lot of sports activities and stuff going on where we had to pull away from it a little bit. But, man, I forgot, just like Kip was saying, I forgot how much fun squirrel hunting is.
Yeah.
And I know it was probably 3 years ago now, the first 3 or 4, I guess, the first time that my daughter was trying to kill squirrels. So we went out, and she had a .22, and I made her shoot open sights. At least the first time, I wanted her to really be a part of it. And we hunted for a couple hours on a Saturday, and it was one of those days. It was just perfect. There was just squirrels everywhere. Like the temperature was right, the weather was right. It was just a lot of activity. And in that 2 hours, she shot 19 times. And we came home with exactly 0 squirrels. And it really opened her eyes because she was a great shot. And, she said, Dad, I can hit the target. I don't know what's going on. And it was just, kind of one of the first steps in her journey as a hunter, realizing how different it is, shooting an animal than it is shooting a target. And what I told her when we got back, I said, so we shot 19 times, but there was at least, half a dozen or a dozen additional times where she almost got a shot, but then squirrel ducked behind a tree or whatever the case was. So it was amazing from the first shot to the last how much she had learned about getting herself in position to be able to shoot. Because at first she's standing there, okay, there's a squirrel. All right, let me try to get ready. And wait, Daddy, the squirrel's gone. To the last shot, anticipating where it's going to be and just putting herself in a better hunting situation. So we left that day, had a phenomenal day. And I said, you know what, now that you have seen this and experienced this, we put a scope on her gun. Went out the next Saturday, and she promptly killed 2 squirrels. So it was a tremendous lesson for her, not just in shooting, but, like really in understanding how to be a hunter. And the 19 shots she took and, the bunch she didn't, said, you know what, that was like, 10 or 20 years of experience if I would have started her on deer hunting.
Yeah.
How many times did you get to shoot at a deer a year?
Did that?
Not very many. So just the amount of opportunities with, experience of, gun on fire, shooting, checking the background, make sure you're safe, shoot, gun back on safe, all of that, you couldn't get that much knowledge or experience, for at least a decade of deer hunting. So I'm a big believer that everybody who starts somebody hunting, junior hunter, youth hunter, or even an adult hunter, who starts, they should start on small game.
Absolutely.
Did that ammo come out of her allowance?
I tell you what, the fact she was a lot like me. She was not afraid to shoot or to throw some lead. So I was glad to be by and take care of that for her.
Nice.
Absolutely. Kip, we have a broad range of listeners. What would you say kind of the key principles are for somebody that's getting into deer hunting? Somebody wants to go out in the woods. What should they really focus on? Should they be focusing on cover? Should they be focusing on food? Should they be focusing on where they think other people are hunting to avoid those areas that are hitting the pressure? What do you think, if you had to give the Kip Adams strategy or tips for how to be a successful hunter in the woods, what would you kind of throw out there to our listeners?
Well, between food and cover that deer need, they obviously need both. What I tell people is if I could only have one or the other, I'd take cover every time. Because if you have food or you're in an area of food, deer are going to go there, but they may go there after dark, and particularly if they're pressured, so they may not be there during shooting hours. Whereas if you have cover, you are always in the ballgame because deer will be in that and use that. So I'm a big fan of hunting cover and using cover to my advantage. Now, it doesn't mean that I forget about where the food is, but I am much more likely to be hunting closer to cover than to food. And just using that, as a way to watch where deer are going to leave that to go to the food or, get back in there, say in the morning after they leave the food. So I definitely would concentrate on cover, particularly if I am in a situation where there's a lot of hunting pressure. State game lands can be an example of that. Or even a lot of private lands where, if there's a bunch of people hunting or those deer are being bumped. So I know some of my good friends who are great hunters that are much more concentrated on food, and I think that works much better in real low hunting pressure areas. But, man, if those deer are being pressured at all, I'll take cover every day of the week.
Absolutely.
And Kip, if we could, I know we were trying to get to learn a little bit more about Kip, but I need to ask you a question. You mentioned something earlier about GPS studies, and I know you had went to school at Penn State. Are you familiar with the study that I think they released some results 2 years ago about the GPS collar studies that they had done on white-tailed deer in and around the State College area?
Well, I'm aware of at least most of the studies they've done in Pennsylvania, if not all of them. We follow very closely with the major deer research like that throughout the country to report on it in our magazine to our members so that they're always up to date on the current research. There's a lot of really neat movement data that's going on around the country, and I'm extremely proud that nobody is doing it any better than Penn State is. Dr. Diefenbach and his students have done top-notch work with that. So actually we had Dwayne at our national convention this summer to present on some of his recent movement studies with the GPS collars. So I'm guessing that I have read it, but is there something specific about that you wanted to ask about?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of the studies are going to yield some of the same results. I was wondering if you could just give us a quick overview of just how amazing some of these results ended up being, where you're seeing deer that are collared, and 11 months out of the year, these deer have, for lack of a better term, a home range of about a square mile. And then all of a sudden, there's 3-4 weeks out of the year where they're 3 miles outside of that home range. And for those 3 to 4 weeks, they move maybe 100 yards. And then, boom, they go right back to it.
Yeah, Dwayne has some really neat maps that he uses during his presentation showing that, and how those deer, as soon as those hunters hit the woods, how those deer just get to those real secure areas, and, movement on a daily basis drops, and they certainly know how to survive. And so there are other studies that have shown that same thing. I personally have not seen any better map than what the Penn State folks have created to show that. They are extremely good maps, and certainly it's anybody who looks at one of those, it's really clear, how much better deer read us and our behavior than vice versa.
Yeah, and that's really what I think, excuse me, that's really what stood out to me was how, they were literally reading us. I couldn't get over it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the steepest, nastiest, thickest cover, they just go and they're in it, and they stay in it till we're done.
Yeah.
Then they go right back to what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because I've got spots where I run trail cameras. I don't necessarily do surveys with them per se, but I got cameras running for the better part of the year in some of these areas, just big woods, state forest, and I get tons of pictures of deer, huge buck all through the summer as they're shedding their velvet, beautiful buck. We hunt up there, 8 to 10 guys in camp every year for the first 3 days of rifle season, and out of 8 to 10 guys, we see about 6 doe, in 3-day time frame. They're gone. It's amazing.
Dr. Carl Miller from the University of Georgia had a student in Pennsylvania a few years ago, and actually was in north central Pennsylvania near St. Mary's, catching mature bucks, collaring them in a heavily forested area to study them, just to look at, hey, is the movement in this area the same as it is in other parts of Pennsylvania or other parts of the country? And one of the really cool maps he had was, this big buck, and actually was living right in the back side of this little development outside of St. Mary's. And the movement data showing same thing that Dwayne's folks had seen. But the one thing that was real telling, it was opening day of deer season. That deer, like at daylight, was right there in the back of that development. By 7, it actually was in a food plot, and then by like 8 o'clock, it was at the edge of a food plot or near an opening where definitely a killable deer. And then I'm sure hunters come in the woods there or just got to that or whatever. So it was like 2 hours after daylight. You could have killed that deer, and then that joker took off and just was gone. And I'm sure he was still within his home range, but he went to a remote part of it and then got to an extremely rugged area, very secure, and then just camped out there and then just waited. So, and one of the researchers looking at it said, look, you can't kill this deer. And I told him, I said, I disagree. That deer was killable for about 2 hours until hunters hit the woods, and then it was over. Then I agree with you. He was unkillable then, which I think just adds to it even more, or some more support for the fact that, as soon as those hunters are in the woods, those deer immediately are behaving or reacting, to what we do. So,
we definitely educate
them. Us know from a hunting
Absolutely.
end how careful we need to be and not letting them know that they're being hunted, because it was extremely clear that deer knew pretty quickly what was going on. So if somebody had been sitting there right off the bat, they could have had a crack at him, but right after that, then now the game was over. He was going to live another year.
Yeah. Now, Kip, that brings up an interesting point. Obviously, PA, we have a very high hunting pressure situation. Do you guys notice at QDMA that the deer movements fluctuate between states just based off of sheer hunting pressure or sheer, food sources and habitat?
There is a definite difference in some of the behavior on deer, strictly because of hunter numbers. And actually, Pennsylvania has more hunters per square mile than any state in the country. And QDMA has done a bunch of research on this. You take the average hunter or average western state, it's about 1 hunter per square mile. In the southeastern U.S., they average about 6 hunters per square mile. The Midwest averages about 6 hunters per square mile. You get to the Northeast, and it almost doubles. We have about 11 hunters per square mile. And Pennsylvania leads that list. There are almost 22 hunters per square mile in Pennsylvania. That is crazy.
Holy buckets.
Or at least, this is as of 4 or 5 years ago when we did that data. We've lost some hunters, so it might not be quite that much now. But, I've used that in some of the presentations I've given. One of the reasons that some states move a lot more bucks into the mature age classes has a lot to do with hunter densities. And Iowa's a perfect example. Iowa has about 4.5 hunters per square mile. Pennsylvania has 22 hunters per square mile. So, that's what, does Iowa have everything deer need? Sure. They have great food and all of that. But, they have the density of mature bucks that they do more so than any other reason just because they have so few hunters.
And I would argue the fact that 2 of those 4 hunters in Iowa are from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they probably are, or at least when they're lucky enough to get drawn to go there.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And with that, I tell people it doesn't mean that you're unlucky to live in Pennsylvania. We're very fortunate that we have the hunters that we do.
We're everywhere.
It means that things are different. We need to manage a little differently than they do in some other areas. So it just kind of goes back to taking the variables of where you are and and making the best situation managing deer that way. So can we manage deer just like they do in Iowa? No, we need to do things a little differently, strictly because of the number of hunters we have. So because of that, a lot more hunter pressure. Those deer are bumped a lot more. So, is their behavior a little different? There's not a study that says, deer in Pennsylvania act different than deer in Ohio, but there's a lot of studies now looking at influence of human behavior on deer and how it changes movement, such as, deer suddenly moving more at night. They're not moving as much during the daylight. So that comes into play big time in Pennsylvania where we have so many hunters.
Gotcha.
Kip, can you tell us a little bit, I think that the big phenomenon that really impressed me this year, at least through social media and the things that I'm getting to come across my feed is there's bigger bucks this year coming out of PA. Is that accurate, or I'm just kind of, because I think that 3 on the restriction,
Yeah,
3 on one side.
We're reaping the rewards, I think.
Is
now,
that's starting to
the restrictions
really come into play? Is that accurate?
That is very accurate, and and what we see, year after year, just the average size buck in Pennsylvania, continues to get a little larger and a little larger, and part of it is we're just moving more deer, past the 2-year-old age class into the 3-year-olds, and suddenly, we have hunters that have never seen a 2-year-old buck kill 2-year-olds, and after they kill a few of those, they say, you know what? I've killed some of them, but what happens if I wait until a deer is 3? And obviously at 2, they're not nearly as easy to kill as they were at 1. And so suddenly you get some 3-year-olds out there, and then some 4-year-olds, and and we have tremendous habitat in many parts of our state. So good feed for deer. So if we do a good job, balancing that deer herd with a habitat, so that those deer get all the food that they need, man, we can grow some incredible deer. And I'll tell you, it's very telling for me because I have a taxidermy business that I do on the side. QDMA is the science part of my brain, and I really like to balance that. Kind of the taxidermy is kind of the art side. But I have a small taxidermy business that I do here and have for the last 15 or 16 years. And it's amazing the number of big deer that I get from Pennsylvania now. I always get a handful or half a dozen deer from the Midwest, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, the Dakotas, and historically, those deer just dwarfed what I got from Pennsylvania, and that's not the case anymore.
No.
So some of the biggest deer that I get now are from Pennsylvania. And actually, last year, I take, I guess, about 25 deer a year, including I had deer from Missouri, the Dakotas, Illinois, and others. And actually, the biggest deer that I got last year was from Illinois. It was a 170-inch deer. The second biggest deer I got was from Pennsylvania. It was 165 inches.
Wow.
Well, it's just incredible. That had never happened in the past. But
it just blew me away.
Now, and it's because of the antler restriction and hunters, seeing, what a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old deer looks like and realizing, wow, I certainly can pass up those younger deer now to have a crack at that.
How old is the antler restriction?
It was 2002.
Okay, gotcha. Wow.
So, it's so long ago, there's a lot of hunters that never remember, not having it. So each year you just get farther removed from the way that it used to be, and it becomes just more natural, to hunt under the antler restriction, and people see the benefits of it, and so we just continue to gain and reap the benefits.
I can't get it over it. I remember being a kid, and I had 2 uncles that killed 8 points every year, like clockwork, and they're just, they were the baddest hunters I knew. And
little basket racket.
And they're just, but if you got an 8-point back then,
oh yeah,
it was
that
king.
Trophy, buddy.
Yeah, that was king. And I'm just blown away. Some of the pictures, and it's just, you can't tell a difference now. I never would dream that you would have a PA deer and an Iowa deer or whatever, and I couldn't. They just look massive now. It's just.
Yep.
So when we go into that 4 on one side restriction.
Yeah, I don't think that you're ever going to see that here, but
As long as we're talking about the future of hunting, Kip, I have an odd request. And I think finally, after all these years of talking about it behind doors with my friends, I might just have found the guy to get it done.
Yeah?
Yeah. So you have access to all these universities and all these brilliant scientists and labs, and I'm sure you know people that have brains that I can't even comprehend. So they can maybe make my dream vision come true. I would like the future of hunting to crossbreed a whitetail with an eastern turkey, because I don't think that animal would be actually huntable. It'd be so smart, but I would actually.
And it needs bear paws.
Yeah,
and it needs
some bear paws.
It needs some bear paws on it, and it needs to scream like a bobcat. If you can make that happen, I'd appreciate it. I'm not sure how much work that would actually take.
Don't tell us if they're already working on it.
Yeah.
Don't.
Here's the thing. Kip just told us he is a professional taxidermist on the side. He could probably make you one. Just one.
Yeah. That's good enough. That animal would be amazing to hunt.
it would. If it could see like a turkey and smell like a deer, at least I would never kill one unless it ran into my truck.
I mean, I know there's this passion and this art about, sometimes certain sounds and grunting call deer in, and rattling can, spark interest of big bucks. But there's always that passion of that intimate talking to a turkey, and that talking the language to bringing a turkey to you. I really wish it was that intimate to really try to pull bucks to you the way you can with turkey hunting.
Like an elk.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I tend to do a lot of calling, particularly during late October and November in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. A lot of grunting, bleats, to a less extent rattling. Partly because it certainly can be effective. Partly just because I enjoy that interaction, with the animals, like with turkey hunting. But even when it works like it's supposed to with deer, there's nowhere near the relationship that you have with that animal like you do with a turkey when you're calling it in.
No.
So I agree with you. The whole dynamic is very, very different.
No, we need a whitetail turkey.
Merriam's is probably as close as you're going to get to a white-tailed turkey.
That is true.
Kip, so PA hunter, we have the oaks in the winter time or in the fall. As we transition into gun season, what do you think a whitetail hunter should be focusing on as a deer's food source in the Pennsylvania woods? As the oaks have already dropped their acorns, where should a whitetail hunter be looking for that sign of food?
Anything from an agricultural end, particularly now as bucks are going to be stopping the rutting here, at least the peak of it. They could have gone a month without eating, so they're going to be looking for anything they can, high-quality food, to put a little bit of that weight back on before winter hits. It's not unrealistic for bucks to lose 20 to 25% of their weight during the rut. So they really will take advantage of anything that's high-quality food. So if there's an agricultural food source in your area, any standing soybeans left or corn, brassicas. If you're particularly in the southern part of the state where clover and alfalfa are still very green and growing, those are dynamite sources. If there's none of that agricultural or food plot in your area, if it's extremely forested, they often then are shifting to some of the more natural or the native browse. So I'm looking for cut areas, young forests, stuff that still have a lot of leaves and a lot of browse right down at ground level, where deer can feel very secure because there's a lot of cover, but yet there's still a bunch of food there. So, and then if I'm in an area that is high pressure, I absolutely am looking for those cut areas. It tend to be a lot thicker vegetation, a lot more security cover. Deer will be in there more just because it's better cover for them, but then that also facilitates more daytime movement of deer. They feel a little more comfortable getting up and moving around a little bit. I'm avoiding open hardwoods at all costs. There's no way I'm going to waste any time in or around big open hardwoods. Deer certainly can be chased through there or pass through there quickly. They don't want to be there, and certainly not during daylight hours. So find cover, and particularly if it's a pressured situation, and typically you can't see as far, but you stand a much higher chance of seeing a deer that you can shoot.
Okay.
Interesting. Now, Kip, I have one last question for you because I know we're getting short on time. Will's already given me the look. But I can't let you go without picking your brain on this topic here real quick because you touched on it. If I'm hunting big woods, north central Pennsylvania, they've been doing a lot of select timber or clear cuts in a couple of different areas. Some of it's oil and gas drilling related. Other stuff is actually just select foresting that they're doing. What's that sweet spot on a clear cut or somewhere that was select timber was taken out where they dropped a lot of the treetops in there and they took the big pieces of lumber out? What's that sweet spot? Is it a year later or 3 years later? And how big's my window before it becomes just it's more?
It sounds really specific.
It is. Yeah. If he could show me where to hang my
It usually
stand.
starts getting good a year later because what happens is when that tree those are cut and all that sunlight hits the floor of the forest, the next growing season you get that flush of young stuff. So it's the same thing that was cut last winter. This year or this fall will be the first good year to be there. So typically the first growing season, certainly by the second growing season after the cut, and then it lasts 7 to 8 years. In this part of the world, at 7 or 8 years, the new stuff that's growing is up tall enough that it starts to shade out the understory, so you lose that big benefit of all that food and cover right at the ground. So your real sweet spot is from years 1 to 2 growing seasons after it was cut, up to 7 to 8 years later, and then you either need to do something again to that to kind of return some of that to that very young stand, or hopefully cut something else in an area that's very close to that. So you're giving deer what they need there too.
All right, so I got to schedule an outing with the entire podcast because we got about 12 stands I need to move up in the state forest because they just cleared out a whole side hill that's on the way to our hunting area.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, this coming summer, we got to move.
Fell swoop.
We got to move everything a couple hundred yards down the ridge.
You got it.
All right, you just let me know where
Good to
because
know.
I'll be hunting probably away from that in the thickest cover because that's where you're going to push them. Before we let you go, I have one more question that may or may not be controversial. The rut. I know there's several different theories out there, as far as moon phase, daylight, weather. What do you think, based off of the research that's done, what do you think the general consensus is for what kicks the rut off and when usually the time frame is for that?
There's a lot of research on that, and it's all very, very clear. The moon phase has zero to do with when those deer are breeding, absolutely nothing. And the way they tell that is they can pull fetuses from does in the winter and the spring, use a fetal scale, and from that be able to figure out the exact day that doe was bred. So you do that for enough does in an area, and then you get a really, really accurate picture of exactly when the peak of the rut is occurring. They've done that in Pennsylvania. Almost every state has done that. So they know exactly how that peak rut varies from year to year. And then you can take a look at when the full moon falls during that time. And so what they found is that wherever that moon is has zero to do with when those does are being bred. It may have something to do with some deer movement. And a lot of hunters incorrectly see that deer movement and are calling that the rut or thinking that's when does are being bred. There's no research that shows that the moon has any impact on deer movement either. A lot of anecdotal stuff, and you hear that all the time. A lot of popular magazines talk about it. Charlie Alsheimer is a friend of mine, and I know he has made a career out of his rut charts for the moon and that. But the professional community, and there's a lot of research that's done. It's extremely clear that moon does not impact breeding at all. It's photo period that drives it, so it's the amount of daylight on each individual day in the fall. And biologically, that makes a lot of sense because when deer are bred, they have 3 trimesters of pregnancy. And obviously, they're bred in the fall. And if it's a really, really bad winter, those does have very little nutrition they can put to fawns. So one of the really cool things to fetuses, one of the really cool things about deer, though, is that they put almost zero energy into that fetus until the 3rd trimester. So the first 2 trimesters are when, the winter is the worst and the doe is just trying to survive. The cool thing is the 3rd trimester starts about green up in the spring. So when there's actually green up and more resources for the doe, that's when that fetus starts growing, and almost all growth occurs in that last trimester. So, which is pretty cool how it works that way. Hey, now there's something green for the doe to eat. She can actually grow that fetus, and then that makes sure that the fawn hits the ground, at an optimal time. So think about it. Sometimes, that full moon in the fall, can sway by up to a month. So there is no advantage for a fawn to be born, a month earlier in the spring than when things are really green, or it's not as advantageous to be born a month after when most of them are born. So it's very good that photo period does drive that, and that then those fawns the does, majority of those anyway, are being bred on time. That doesn't mean that some aren't bred, a month or 2 earlier or later, because that does happen. We know that. But the fact that the majority of them are bred over a very short window, that's what's most important. In Pennsylvania, between the 10th and 20th of November, year in and year out, that ensures that our fawns are hitting the ground at the optimum time in the spring, and gives them the best chance to grow as much as they can before fall. And it also ensures that there is good cover in the spring to hide them from coyotes and bears and bobcats and other things that are trying to eat them. So we're lucky that it is driven by photo period.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
That brings up one last question that I have, Kip, for you. We're talking about, the population of deer in Pennsylvania and how Will said the bucks are getting bigger, and I totally agree with that. I've seen bigger bucks in the last 3 years than I have since I was 12. And when I was 12, we saw a couple big bucks here and there, but nothing like now. There was a giant period there where to get an 8-point was pretty amazing. However, in your opinion, as a Pennsylvania native, is getting kids into small game hunting, is as important as that is to you, is it as important for people to take up to predator hunting coyotes and foxes and things like that in Pennsylvania? Because me as a predator hunter, I don't really run into other guys predator hunting at night. I don't think that's a big, I don't know if coyotes are as big of a problem as people say they are in Pennsylvania, but they're extremely smart. And I don't think that, it's my opinion. I've seen them. They've come into the calls. I don't think that people give coyotes their due credit. I think there's more than we think there is.
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of them, and I think they're probably about the hardest thing to kill from a hunting perspective, is why you often don't see a lot more people out hunting them. I think small game hunting is more important to get folks involved with, partly just because there's a lot more opportunity for that. From a predator end, I hunt predators. I have a lot of fun doing it. From a hunting end, though, we're never going to kill enough coyotes to have an impact on their populations.
No, they're too hard to hunt.
Right, and you have to remove such a high percentage of them to even make a dent in them. But So I tell people, you're not going to reduce coyote populations or anything, but as far as hunting, go hunt and just have fun doing it for the recreational end of it. I also love to trap, but between predators and small game, I think it's a lot more important if we could only have them do one to get folks involved with small game.
I agree.
Makes sense.
I agree. I got you.
Absolutely. Well, Kip, we're pretty much out of time.
No, I got one more question. I could ask him questions all night.
Oh, yeah.
We could keep going. I hate
I
to.
crossed a couple off my
Yeah.
list.
Did you?
I was like, nah, I can't ask that. Nah.
Thanks for answering the questions that we had, Kip. We appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with us, and it was very informative. And we definitely look forward to talking to you again here soon.
It's been great.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate it, guys. I had a good time, and everything that I've talked about is available on our website at qdma.com. If anybody wants to go and find that or find additional information or whatever, they can grab it there for free. And yeah, I've enjoyed myself. I look forward to talking to you guys again. So certainly good luck this season.
Thanks, Kip.
All right,
Thank
will
you.
do. Have a great night, guys.
All right, thanks, you
See you,
too.
Kip.
Wow, my whitetail brain just exploded.
As well it should have.
Yeah.
Yahtzee.
That was a wealth of knowledge in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I wish we had more time. Like all the time, we got guys like that pop on the show, and it's just, man.
Yeah.
I should keep my questions for the next genius that we get to talk to. I mean, I have so many questions.
At least this one didn't rip on you.
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't keep them on the line long enough. It's good we got them all. Before we did.
He was very generous to your eye.
Yeah. I didn't ask any really dumb questions this time.
Well, my last name's Dahlberg, Ryan.
Did you ever tie one of those Adams flies? Oh, well, my name's Kip Adams. Of course I have. Oh, son of a...
You didn't put two and two together?
Come on,
The whole
right?
county around here is named after him.
Awesome.
He's a great guy, and like I said, when we talked to him, I mean, he's done it all from his studying that he did at Penn State, moving to Florida, then up to New Hampshire. Now he's back
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
he knows his stuff.
Yeah, you name it. He's dabbled in it. Black bears, whitetails, whatever game he dealt with in Florida, pretty much all of it, probably.
Everything but pythons.
Everything but pythons. But yeah, Kip Adams, great host, wealth of knowledge. Strongly recommend you guys check out the QDMA website and just check out Kip Adams individually, because guy is a very sharp dude, knows his stuff when it comes to whitetails, and writes some great articles as well. So
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
he's going to make me a whitetail turkey
With bear paws.
with bear paws.
yeah,
It's going to be amazing.
it's gonna
He's
be
going to spray
glorious.
like a skunk.
He didn't bring that up. He should have. So, having said that, Kyle, you pass up any deer?
Yeah, I passed up a couple. Let's just say,
Come on, man.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to
I get it.
I'm trying to best the last buck I got. It's hard to do.
Let them go so they can grow.
I guess. That doesn't apply in Pennsylvania. We just talked about that.
We did.
22 per square mile. Dudes.
He's going to grow a good bit till he crosses over the hill and gets shot by the guy on the neighboring property.
Hey, you never know.
He might just hunker down just out of range.
Hunker down they do. I can attest to that.
Yeah, Penn State study proved that one. Yeah. So it's been quite the deer season for us, fellas. It's
For you. No, I've
everyone.
I've had a phenomenal deer season. It's been uphill and both ways.
Yeah, for me, the trouble really has been just getting the legal antlers in bow range.
yeah.
I saw a lot of buck, had a lot of doe come through, but just nothing with three or more on one side. And I wasn't going to be picky this year because I'm focusing on getting the kids out there and getting them connected. But just couldn't make it happen.
Should have taken some notes from you then on that one there, Ryan. Not being picky.
I should have took some notes from Ryan, actually, because I was dead set in my ways about fishing to the last second. and then the 6 days off I had in archery season, it rained 5 of them, and it just rained like downpour mud rain, and I didn't get as much time out there as I normally do this year, and preparing for rifle season has been pretty busy for me this year. With we're going to take my dad out again this year, so Dad got a new toy.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. I drove down to almost North Carolina, Southern Virginia, and got Dad what's called an action track chair. And it's like a wheelchair with tank tracks.
That thing looks badass.
I've tested it. I can't say it's not super fun. My neighbor's yard's all ripped up because, I'm not ripping mine up.
Why would you?
But no, it's fun. So it'll be cool to get him out this year. Hopefully it'll get him back out in the woods. But archery season wasn't total bust. I got a doe.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the one day it didn't rain.
Well, see, there you go.
And I didn't have to do hardly any work. So, as we said, I don't know if you heard, Will pulled it out for me, did all the work. So
Yeah, you called Will's Deer Dragon service, didn't you?
I did actually. Yeah, that's exactly how I put that when I call Will and I'm all excited and say I shot a deer and I'm all excited. That just, I guess it translates into, hey, when you getting down here with the honey buns and dragging it out for me?
I heard that Will's Deer Dragon service does a lot of that whole the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line thing.
Yeah.
It don't matter
when
what's
you just
in the
tell
way.
them where the truck is, they just go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Briars or nothing, they don't care.
Make a new
Just-
path. Yeah.
It's almost like when you shoot a duck and the water retrieving dog, you just go, you point. It's that way.
Get him, Will. Get him.
Will, you're running into trees. Get out of my way.
Once I
Should have
think
been standing there.
I'm gonna keep like a pair of brush pants and stuff like that for the next time I do the tracking jobs, because man, is it briary hell.
Yeah, it's not good down there. Yeah.
But what kind? I can't even. This year's been crazy. I've missed more deer than I missed more deer this year than I've shot in the last 3 years. So,
Yeah,
It happens. I mean, doesn't happen to me, but happens to other people. I've heard.
right.
we've had quite the run-in with a few deer ninjas here on the R2 pro staff.
Duckers.
Duckers, they're quick little buggers.
Is that what you meant to text me? Duckers.
Oh,
Okay.
spell check.
I thought you said something different, but duckers make sense.
Yeah, no, he wasn't wearing Dockers.
Those deer are a bunch of duckers. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't for a lack of seeing deer. I mean, I think I know me personally, I saw tons of deer. It's just a matter of
Yeah, that last Saturday the weather was perfect.
yeah.
And I know it was actually one of the better days I've had from a stand, just as far as activity goes.
Oh,
and I
it's-
made it about 5.5 hours of daylight on the last day before I had to get out for kids' sports stuff. And I had deer around me all morning. It's
Yep.
just, the buck that were in bow range, just, they weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Seeing buck that were legal, bucks that were definitely shooters, and I see them chasing deer, just, luck of the draw, the spot that I'm in.
Yeah.
I got a funny story real quick from what's new. So, in between the rain and pheasant hunting, what's new this week? I got 3 pheasants this week, too, by the way. So, that was good.
That's great.
And between splitting my time with goose hunting on Saturday morning, does take away from archery season a little bit. But, so last Saturday, it was pretty chilly out in the morning here
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania.
It's like
I don't,
down
19.
low mid-20s.
yeah. So we set up for goose in the morning instead of going archery hunting. And we were sitting inside the corn. We weren't layout blinding it. We were 3 rows back in this corn, and the cut cornfield next to this corn, we had all the decoys in. A few flocks come over, took us a look. We had a couple locked up and flare, and it was a good morning. It was a fun morning. But the fun part was we had like 6, 7, 8 dozen full-body decoys out. And this little 4-point buck come out of the woods out of nowhere and just ran up to our decoy set, stuck his chest out, rut season, stomping his foot, snorting, blowing snot everywhere, shaking his head, and we stepped out of the corn to chase him off because geese were coming, and he just stood there and looked at us at it was 25, 30 yards. He didn't care that we were there at all. He did not like those geese in his area. I've never seen it before. And then he ran down the corn row, turned around and ran right back at us, and sat there and stomped at them geese decoys. It was fun to watch, but I've not seen nothing like it before.
You guys stepped out of the corn. Do you have that look on his face like, come on?
Yeah.
Come on.
I thought he was coming.
Take all you.
Yeah.
All y'all.
Oh, and my buddy Chris that I hunt geese with, he got a nice fox that morning that ran through the corn. So that was cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Big day out.
Yeah.
I think he was coming after the decoys, too. Everything's attracted to the decoys except for the
Except
geese.
for the geese. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you guys a quick recap of my rutcation. So, every year I always try and take a week off right around when the rut starts heating up. This year was no different. So, after this vacation, I'm more than convinced that the deer are definitely smarter than me because
We could have told you that.
because I swear,
Kyle,
yeah,
the deer smarter than you.
I'm
They got tree stands
Yeah.
right beside you that are taller than you. Looking
yeah,
at you.
I'm convinced of that.
They're up
because
there with the little girl.
I kid you not. Literally every move that I made this past week of my rut vacation.
Every breath you took?
Yeah.
Every little step?
Every-
I went
yeah.
Bobby Brown. See?
Everything.
That's completely different.
I went the sting.
Yeah.
The
Yours is
de-
better. You were saying?
the deer were 1 step, 2 step ahead of me. So
Like Paul Abdul.
yeah, exactly.
You took 1 step forward.
I took 2 steps back.
So
We could do this all night.
Go on. I like where this is going.
yeah. So I figured, you know what? I'm stopping with the man in the mirror. So
Makes sense.
so the first Monday out, I'm out.
Don't get louder because your story's getting interrupted.
I'm sorry. I'm getting excited. So,
You just filled us.
Story's getting better.
so that Monday I go out. I'm sitting by a tree stand about 7 o'clock in the morning. I get a text from the wife. Oh, there's a buck in the front yard. Mind you, I just left my house at 2 hours before daylight to go half hour away from my house.
Yeah.
To go. So
Well, they waited till you
Yeah.
left. Showed up in your yard.
Your wife's throwing corn at him out the front door.
she's shooing him off with a broom.
Yeah.
Here, dear.
Beat it.
So that was day one. Day two,
That should have been your sign.
Yeah.
Right there. It's like, you know what? Go back to work. I'll save these days for later.
yeah.
For slug season.
So day two, it was all the little ones just making fun of me. All the guys staying out of range. Just saying, "Hey, you can't shoot us."
Yep.
Watch this.
Day 3.
Day three, I had an encounter with 2 legal bucks, but since I'm picky and I passed up on them, I did not shoot either of them. So that was good.
Good old pass them up, Kyle.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what we call him.
Yeah, that's what we all call it. Way to go, Kyle.
I'll have way more opportunity.
Yeah, I'll have plenty more opportunity. I'm way smarter than these deer. They won't even know what hit them.
I pass deer up all the time like that when I'm eating my sandwich. If I'm having my sandwich in my hand, it's goodbye. You came at the wrong time because I ain't stopping.
Go on, get.
But Thursday morning when I left my house,
Day 4.
I saw another buck literally next to my property, standing at the edge of the roadway.
Oh, that's the one you sent the picture of.
No, that was Thursday afternoon.
Wait a minute. You didn't even tell us about day 5 yet.
I know. I'm on day 4.
Oh, okay.
So
Which is just before day 5.
so day day
I'm waiting for day 5.
so day 4. See a buck in the morning again at my house, just taunting me, saying, "Why are you leaving when you could have sat here and shot us?" So Saturday in the morning, saw a couple doe. Had tons of doe around me, and again, small buck. Thursday afternoon.
Story of my season right there.
Thursday afternoon, I go to another spot. As I'm on my way to the spot Thursday afternoon.
That was the one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, I'm mistaken. Thursday afternoon, I hunted behind my house.
This story's confusing.
Yeah, I know.
enough.
It's confusing me.
It'll
Thursday
make
It's
sense
only
on the
because he
playback.
has 64 stands.
Yeah, Thursday afternoon, I hunted behind my house, and I saw a buck, but again, not a legal buck. So then
Friday
Friday
Day
morning,
5.
Friday morning, I get completely skunked. I was like, nuts. So then,
I'm glad you said
Yeah.
how you're feeling.
yeah. Hey,
Shucks.
Hey, question for you.
Keep it.
What's cheaper, deer nuts or beer nuts?
I don't even know.
Deer nuts, because they're under $1.
I got you there.
Yeah.
Day 5 evening hunt.
Day 5 evening hunt. I am en route to the spot, and it's about 12:30. And what do I see at the field across from where I'm going to be hunting? A giant 8-point. So
That's the one from the picture.
Yeah, that's the
and
one
That was a heavy horn buck.
Yeah.
That one looked good.
So the taunting continued all week
By us.
by the deer.
Oh, by the deer.
Yeah.
And us.
And you guys.
In the recap.
So that
Day 6.
Saturday morning, I was like,
Morning
I
hunt.
said, after all these interactions, I said, I'm pulling the trail camera behind my house. Lo and behold, what happened? There was a good buck that decided he was going to come out during daylight right underneath my stand Friday night when I was sitting somewhere else. So
That's actually why I pull my cameras about the second week archery season.
yeah.
So you don't know.
So yeah.
So
Because all I do is sit in a stand and second guess myself that I should
Yep.
be in a different stand.
Uh-huh.
So the cameras come out about second to third week archery,
Yep.
and I'll put them back up during rifle, so I can get an inventory of what makes it through.
Yeah.
And I don't want to know during that time. Don't want to know.
So after
SMRT.
checking the trail camera, I was like, all right, now I'm on to you guys. I'm in position to put the pinch on them.
Yeah.
So
Saturday evening.
I was
Dun, dun.
I'm going behind the house on this scrape that they've been hitting all week. It's right underneath my stand. Foolproof plan. Got a big old goose egg, saw nothing.
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, I got 2 deer in Indiana. Too soon?
Oh.
Too soon?
No, it's good.
So, needless to say,
I think I heard about them.
yeah, needless to say, my rutcation was not unfulfilled with deer experiences. It was just the wrong kinds.
Did you have a
And,
good time in the stand?
It was absolutely beautiful.
I did.
Perfect week for the weather.
You can tell when you send us all those selfies. You can see the happiness on your face.
Absolutely.
I can tell it.
Yeah. That was a mental break that I needed for the year. So it was.
There's a wise man once sent a picture on Instagram that said something to the effect of, just because you aren't dragging one out at the end of the day doesn't mean you didn't have an epic day.
Who was that guy?
He wasn't very smart. I
remember.
What's he talking about?
Remember where I saw that, but
Well, he must have been hungry too, though.
it struck. It struck a chord with me.
I bet for this year.
Well,
at least.
I'll save it for another podcast, but I did find an amazing new place to archery hunt right by my house. And it's a long story, so we won't get into it. But you do have to go down the creek, in the creek with chest waders. And there's some floating logs and stuff like that. Long story short, I tried to sit on a floating log and hunt in the creek. And as I was trying to take a selfie of this epic spot,
Uh-oh.
I was done taking the blurry selfie, and I sat the phone on my waders that were just out of the water on my lap in order to put my gloves back on to put my phone away. And I saw the crossbow that was laying on the dead tree that was across the creek as I was taking a selfie, go to fall. So I jumped for the crossbow, and I watched the phone slowly slip off my lap. Oh. I'm not sure how many phones have gone in the water this year.
Right. It's double digits.
But in order to reach down to the bottom of the creek to find the phone, it was just enough to get my whole shoulder wet in my arm, and it was freezing cold. And then I felt the water creeping down inside the chest
Into
wader,
the waders.
on the armpit part. And I was like, oh man, I couldn't find it. I had to go back to the house, get the brand new headlamp that I have a good friend, Will. I don't know if you told. Found this headlamp that is
I know that guy.
16,000 million candle power.
It's got more lumens.
I went down
I
and
know
just
what to
turned
do.
it on, and the creek started like bubbling. That's how. But anyhow, I found it, and it's the first phone I've ever dumped in the water. I found and it still works. I was amazed.
Incredible.
And I put it in a bag of rice for a little bit so that it would charge, but other than that, it still works. So
Yeah.
So he's got that going.
I
for him.
can't really tell you. It's a really nice place. It's nice. Not saying it's close to the house, but it might be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, guys.
You didn't tell us about day 7.
Yeah.
Changing
Day seven.
diapers, lots of sleep. Case over.
Day 7, changing diapers, lots of sleep, no hunting because we live in a state where they don't allow it on Sundays.
Maybe small game Sunday.
Yes. Hopefully.
If my buddy gets working on that.
Baby steps.
We're going to have to do something. Football sucks anymore.
Yeah. My buddy Kip Adams is going to work on that for
Yes.
me.
Yeah. Our
So-
buddy Kip.
All right. Well, this has been fabulous, guys. Thank you so much for doing this every week. And thank you to Kip Adams
Yeah. Thank you
for
again,
joining
Kip.
us on the show. It was amazing.
You can find us at www.ruttenriverpursuits.com, and you can find us on Instagram at R2 Pursuits, and follow us individually. That's kind of fun. Stevie's got lots of good stuff on there, and R2 Buck as well. So you can go to our website and
www.ruttenriverpursuits.com.
and hit the hashtag 2D taxidermy. Try to get your picture up on the front of our website for
Absolutely.
picture of the week. And you can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher,
Google
Castbox.
Box,
Google Play.
Google Play.
No, Castbox is the best one.
Yeah.
I've still not seen it, but we're on there.
And don't forget, if you don't have any of those fine apps, you can also listen to our podcast on the YouTubes. So
That is right.
we are we're everywhere. So if you
We're
can't find us, just look harder.
We're everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks again, guys.
Good hunting to you.
See ya. It's always a good/bad sign rifle season when you just hear one lone shot. It's like, oh, they got that one.
When you hear the 3 or 4, and a couple seconds later you hear 3 or 4 closer, and you're like, it's on its way.
Yeah, here it comes.
coming this way.
Here it comes.
It's still hightailing it.
You know, you get excited, and you're like,
All right.
all right, it's gonna be quick shooting, but I'm ready.
Time to limber up.